My name is Susan Higgins. I have the pleasure of being the International Partner Care Facilitator for an organization called Global Teams, two of which are here with me. My quick background, Kevin, my husband, and I spent some years in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and there wasn't any partner care. There wasn't any missionary care. It's not that there wasn't a heart for it, there just wasn't the realization of the need for it. So, as a result of my personal experiences, as we took over the leadership of Global Teams some years later, my husband and I both realized the absolute vital need to care for our missionaries. If you've been attending some of the plenary sessions, we've already heard about some of the terrible statistics of people leaving the field well before they've even begun to reach any sort of effectiveness or understanding of what their culture is. So that comes back to us as organizations, us as churches. What do we do to change that statistic? How can we take better care of our missionaries wherever they go, is so that they can have the longevity that I believe we all set out to have, and that they can actually achieve some level of effectiveness. So, as I was thinking about this presentation, I realized that there's lots of resources available. I'm not a repository of those resources. And we can get you hooked up if you feel like you need it. But I realized that as a field partner myself, what were some of my issues that made my time in those countries challenging? Now, we didn't come home because we became disenchanted with the missions field. We came home for extended family health issues, which is also a very common issue, especially as we get to be a certain age. We get aging parents, or we have kids that are approaching school issues. So there's lots of reasons why people come home. But I realized that one of the things that I think is a huge issue that it was never articulated when I was going through the application process, is the idea of expectations. Expectations are usually unarticulated. They're usually unrealistic, and they're oftentimes conflicting with each other. So I realized that people have expectations. We have expectations of ourselves. I'm going to go and do amazing things because God's giving me this amazing call, and I love Jesus. Therefore, it's all going to come together. Yeah, right. Exactly. So I think one of the challenges as an organization or as a church, and even as we go, I think it's really important that we take a long, hard look at what those expectations are. What do I expect of myself? What do I expect of my spouse or my family? What do I expect of God? Americans, I think without realizing it, we have an entitlement issue. Okay, God, I've said yes to you. I'm going to this place that's not a very pretty place, and I'm doing this for you. Therefore, this is what I expect of you to do for me. I expect you to take care of me. I expect not to have difficulties. I expect language learning to go well. I expect of you. And we don't articulate those very well either. We're ashamed of that. But that's part of the dynamic, I think, many times in our relationship with the Lord. Another area of expectations is expectations of the others in our life, whether that's our sending church, our sending organization, our friends, our families, our children who we're taking with us. There's a lot of expectations that we place on these sets of relationships Well, of course they're going to take care of us. Of course the people who are on that side are going to be happy to receive us. We're coming for them. And, oh, well, my kids will learn to like it. You know, I think we project a lot onto the other people in our lives. So I think it's extraordinarily important. And maybe I'm saying all this because these are things that I didn't deal with. I had expectations of God. I had expectations of the receivers at one of our mission fields. And they were completely unrealistic, completely dashed. And so I had to regroup and figure out, what am I doing here? And how am I going to manage being here if these expectations that I've had aren't realistic or they're not shared? You know, and as interesting as it is when you are feeling a call, we can get swept up in the going and neglect some of these other issues. One of the quotes that I came across as I was preparing for this was from Charles Spurgeon, and one of the biggest hindrances to our life with Christ is our work for Christ. And it's pretty subtle there. Sometimes we get so carried away in working for Jesus that we neglect to have a relationship with Jesus. And the rigors of dealing with a cross-cultural stress, many times the first thing to go is our private time, our quiet time, our solitude time, our Sabbath time. And so then we begin to run on empty, and we're not even realizing we're running on empty. So it's important that we, from the very get-go, in the application process, whether we're an organization or a church that's trying to send people, or even ourselves, is to begin to be willing to take a good hard look at myself. What are my expectations of myself? What's my relationship with God like? Do I have in place ahead of time, before going to that stressful situation, the practices that are going to carry me through some of these stresses? And I'm so pleased in some of the conversations that I've had here in the last few days, the increasing awareness of the importance of spiritual direction, coaching, in this process of being prepared to go to serve in the harvest. One of the things that struck me too as I was preparing for this was there's 120 map talks that have been presented or being available to people, and there's really, out of all of those 120, there's only 2 or 3 that really talk about this issue of care, self-care. So at least it's on the radar screen now here in our missions world. That's a positive thing. But I think if we don't begin to take serious and hard attention to this issue, the statistics are going to remain the same. Because these statistics of attrition, they've been the same for about 20 years. Not only the few people going to actual unreached people groups, but the early return home, those statistics have been the same. So, expectations, I think, are a huge issue. My expectations of myself, my expectations of God, and my expectations of other people. And sometimes you don't even know what your expectations are until they're not met. Until I get to the field and realize, oh wow, yeah, I expected to do better with language learning. This sucks. I'm not good at it. It's hard. My husband, in my case, literally, my husband was amazing. He was just gifted. And I'm slogging away, and we're both going to the same tutor, and had some joint sessions for a while, and realized early on that wasn't going to work because he was making progress, and I didn't want to hold him back. My expectations of going out into the community and learning and practicing, well, I happen to be in a Muslim majority country, and that just wasn't going to happen for me as a woman. I had a house helper who didn't speak any English, and so she did become an amazing helper, but she also had to do the things we needed to do to keep this house running, 2 little people in it, boiling the water and, laundry by hand and all that sort of stuff. So I had to really modify my expectations and be willing to accept that I'm just not a great language learner. It was hard work for me. I didn't always like it. So that was a rude awakening. And then I prayed for the gift of tongues. But the Lord never gave me the gift of that language. And I did have expectations of God that He would take care of us. And He absolutely did. But it wasn't without lots of challenges. So I had to be willing to admit my own expectations of God, that I didn't want to have to face some of the things that He allowed me to go through. And then the expectations of others. And I think some of the saddest stories I've heard are when people feel so supported out the door by their church, especially their home church, and then a couple of months down the road, these people are moving on with what's in front of them. They can't help it. But I've gone out here and I'm still tethered, I'm still emotionally very dependent upon this group of people to support me. Out of sight, out of mind, that's a hard reality. And as missionaries, I think that's one of the realities that we just have to accept, that they're going to go on to different things. Come on in. So, expectations. Unrealistic, unarticulated, and often conflicting. And if someone had sat me down before I went and just said, Susan, I want you to think about these things, I think that could have been so helpful. One of the other areas that I think we need to be ready to think about as missionaries ourselves, as senders, whether it's churches or organizations, is that there's different care seasons. And we need to be ready to take care and address those care seasons. A lot of attention is paid to the partner development season of raising your support. That's huge. That can often take more than a year. But what else are we doing during that preparation time? Are we developing the practices that are going to give us a solid foundation in the future? No one even put that in my brain when I was getting ready, that Susan, this is a great time to be cultivating your own spiritual health. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. While I'm waiting for God to provide financially, no one made that suggestion to me. Preparing our churches. Why do we expect our churches to know what we need without us talking about it ahead of time? I think that's also another part of the preparation phase, is getting our churches on board, articulating those expectations. What are my expectations of my church? What are my church's expectations of me as a missionary being sent from them? How often do they want to hear from me? What do they want to hear? Are they on board with the fact that probably the first 2 years is really going to be culture and language learning? Or do they want to start hearing all these amazing reports of conversions and baptisms? Yeah.
So, how many did you say?
Right. So are we on the same page? Am I cultivating that awareness with my sending church? What are the expectations of my sending organization? Those are usually better clarified, because the sending orgs usually have a pretty clear idea of what they want from their missionaries and what they hope to be able to give and hope to be able to receive. But there's lots of time to do some of this preparation. I don't know that we always take advantage of that time. Part of the preparation that is often neglected, I think because we're so anxious to get people who are willing to go, that sometimes we don't do the best of asking hard questions during that preparation phase. I think the application phase is not just, are you a suitable candidate, but how can we come alongside you as a potential candidate and make sure that you have your life in order so that you can go and succeed. there's lots of hard questions that need to be asked. And, oh, that's, do we really want to go there? Well, that seems very personal. We have a tendency, I think, to sometimes hedge. This is a time for the organization, the church, and the missionary to be really willing to take hard looks at self and say, yeah, I've got some issues over here I really need to deal with. And so let's get you the inner healing. Let's get you the counseling. Let's make provision for some spiritual direction or some coaching ahead of time so that you're not crashing and burning and discovering these issues midway through your first or second or third year. So I think that we have a lot more opportunity to provide that preparation care, but we have to be very proactive about it and be willing to ask hard questions. One of the other care seasons that I feel like it's on people's radar screen, but sometimes we overlook the importance of ongoing maintenance care. A lot of effort is put into getting someone to the field. Preparation, fundraising, language learning, yes. Hannah.
Yes, this is starting to feel so wonderfully like John 15. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't just pull a branch off of a tree and throw it to another country.
And expect it to take root.
Yes, to be deriving life from the vine and through the life of the church.
Mm-hmm. It's very much a collaborative effort, absolutely. It's based on that. I don't have specific scriptural references, but thank you, Hannah. That's very helpful.
Someone gave me that image back when I was in college. The emergent church was starting to be talked about. Like, I don't need the church. It's just me and Jesus and my podcast and stuff. And someone said that what happens to a finger if you cut it off from the body? I mean, it's dead. It's thoroughly
absolutely dead.
It needs to derive life from the body.
Yes. So we absolutely need each other. Now, there's going to be, there's been conversations about teams and how to, because I guess that's another set of expectations. What's it going to be like to work in a team? Well, where we went, there wasn't a team. We were the first people to go there. So how did we figure out how to get some life blood, how to plug into some sort of body that was going to help us be in that John 15 nurturing situation. So you have to be creative in order to find it. Come on up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very pleased that you interacted. I'd love for this to be very interactive. So expectations, preparation, maintenance. How do we keep people on the field? We get them there. How do we keep them there? Just because they weren't dealing with such and such an issue when they went doesn't mean they're not going to start dealing with such and such an issue after they've been there. Are we maintaining? Are we doing regular checkups? Are we still asking hard questions? Just because we ask them once doesn't mean that that's a done deal. We don't have to go there again. Unfortunately, the statistics on issues like pornography only get worse.
Yeah.
Or they develop while someone's overseas and dealing with stress. Are we continuing to self-monitor and touch base as the church, as the sending organization, to make sure that ongoing issues are being identified? If something comes up and we don't feel prepared to cope with it, as an organization, what do? Okay, well, thankfully there's a growing number of resources available to help deal with some of these really hard issues. Yes.
What are some of those resources?
I can get them to you. I don't have them listed right now, but yes, there's a growing number, and that's one of my dreams from my time here, is to collect as many resources as I can for our little organization, but very happy to share. So yes, there's a growing cadre of very qualified people who are wanting to deal with some of these issues. So maintenance, how are the kids grappling with school? You have toddlers that grow into elementary school kids and junior high and high school. Those are huge transitions in our own culture without the stresses. How are we helping families go through that as they're on the field dealing with maybe a homeschool situation, boarding school situation, going to national local school situation, how are we helping families cope with that? Are we checking in regularly? And then transitions. Transitions back home, transitions into retirement, transitions into being the parents here and the kids are now in college in the States. How are we helping families and individuals deal with transitions that happen during the course of this missionary journey thing that we've all said that we want to be committed to? So as I thought about these care seasons, I realized that our approach needs to be very deep, willing to ask those hard questions, thorough, and ongoing. It's not a once and done. And the challenge is that, okay, we got through that season. Whew. It's easy to want to coast. At least that's been my experience. Okay, now we need to get ready, hopefully proactively, for the next potential situation. And each individual, whether it be a family, a single, married couple, retired married couple, each unit needs to be handled very, very individually. And I think we all give mental assent to that, but if it's an organization that's dealing with quite a few field partners, that's a challenge. Okay, well, we have this program for this age, and we've got these questions for this situation. Well, it needs to incorporate a whole lot more personal interaction, I think, between, again, the missionary, the church, and the organization. So, care seasons, deep, thorough, and ongoing, I believe, are really important. And just recently, I'm on the mailing list for a Link Care Center out in California, and an article came through about, I'm a TCR. What's a TCR? I've never heard of that. I've become quite familiar with the TCK, Third Culture Kid concept and issues, and have had the pleasure of learning more about that. A TCR is a third culture retiree. More and more people are either aging into retirement from being on the field or choosing to do missionary work as retired people. Those issues are also very unique. So are we keeping up with the different sort of life stages that our missionaries are going to be in? So I realized that in my family, we went with little girls. Then we had to be in the States for a while. We sent everybody off, and then we were a married couple doing it kind of singly, and now Kevin's got aging parents, and so we're more stateside than we used to be, and so these have all been transitions. Have I had a roadmap to help me with these transitions? No, but I'm hoping as we are more aware of all of these issues as organizations, churches, individuals, we'll be able to be a little bit more proactive in addressing some of these things. And then the last thing, like I said, Hannah, is the idea of resources. So Beth is a
Licensed professional counselor.
right. And so to know that there are Jesus-focused licensed practitioners who are stepping forward to provide help. Now that we've got Skype and Zoom, we can actually talk from, depending upon time zones, I suppose, from China to California if something really came up. When we were first on the field, we had to make an appointment to make a long international phone call. So praise God, technology is in our favor now, but we have to make sure that technology is all based on an element of the human, the relationship, the long-term relationship of trust that can help set a foundation for dealing with some of these issues. Because, yeah, I've got issues, but I'm not going to tell you unless I trust you. And that might take a couple years, even within my own culture and my own organization. So that issue of trust, which we, I think, recognize as an important cross-cultural issue, is just as much an issue when we're dealing with caring for our own people within our own culture. So that's kind of what I had to share with you all today. I think we have some time for questions. Yes.
My organization gave us a number of books about, sending and going, and focused on some focused on sending. And two of them were full of, all I can say are horror stories of people who went out in the field, did the work they were supposed to do, came back, and they were functionally strangers to the congregation that had sent them. This wasn't necessarily our denomination, but on the other hand, when I look at it, it's like, we'll be gone for 3 to 5 years. Kids grow up, life moves on. It's like, Rangers. They used to come here. How do you train or encourage, and this is sort of on us as pioneers for our congregation, to pay attention to stuff like that.
I think if you...
The out of sight, out of mind.
Right, well, that does
issue.
happen. It's just the way we humans are. I think one of the best things you can do, any of us can do, is form maybe a small core group within our congregation who are going to be our advocates in our absence. We're going to communicate with them, and they're going to keep us in front of the congregation. Now, honestly, most congregations, they're doing their Bible studies, their women's programs, their men's programs. They have a church calendar year that they're trying to get through. Figure out maybe ahead of time how you can be speaking into those church seasons and send information. But it's going to have to be based on a relationship, I think, with some core people that are going to be your advocates in that place. So that's a short little answer. Talk more, but right?
One of my thoughts was when we got to the missions field that things would be different. My husband is a go, go, go. You don't go anywhere unless there's a job in it. So when we got to the missions field, it was the same thing. And that was hard because he wanted to be with the Nepali people. He wanted to live like the Nepalese, and he wanted to do all these things. And I hold the phone. So, but that happened on the missions field. It should have happened before we left.
One of the challenges is, like I said, sometimes we don't know our expectations until they're not met. So establishing a culture of communication while we're on the field with our spouse or with our organization, so that we can say, this is my MO, this is what's driving me, how are we working together on that? It's so much about communication. But I think in my case, I had to start with me. I had to articulate my own stuff so that I could articulate it to someone else. And I'm a slow learner.
Me too. 7 years. Took 7 years.
So some of the
I addressed it a couple of years ago.
Yeah, some of the self-expectation stuff, I think, comes through self-awareness and my own identity as a beloved of Jesus. That's the bottom line. Not what I do, what I accomplish, even not my roles, but I am beloved of Jesus. That's my starting point. And from there, then, okay, how do I be a good wife? How do I be a good mom? How do I be a good missionary? But that self-awareness took me a while. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so vital as I think about the people going to the field to help with that awareness and concept of our own identity. Yeah.
One of the things that helped me a lot before I went to the field is immediately when I said I was going, before any training came up or anything like that, my church appointed a group of people that would meet with me every week, and we would just pray.
That's awesome.
And we would pray through the, expectations, like you said. Because I had no idea what I was, stepping into, and I didn't even know what my expectations were.
Right.
I needed somebody to ask those questions. Well, what do you think about this? What's going to happen if? And it was very, very helpful. And they stayed with me to today. They were still with me. And my church is gone. My church dissolved.
Right.
But those people are still my core group.
That is so beautiful. I don't think very many people have that, Yvonne. So that's great.
When we told our rector that we'd had this invitation and we were thinking about it, his first response was, "Oh, you need a discernment committee. We'll just treat you like somebody who's said they've got a vocation. Although
And-
getting people together is sometimes a challenge.
Right.
But we did get together on a regular basis
Okay.
and pray, check in about where we were in the process and where we thought we were, affirmations and challenges.
Well, you might ask if those same people are willing to continue to be part of your ongoing relationship committee. The discernment part maybe is completed, but the ongoing relationship with the church committee, just an idea, just a brainstorm. And that's, again, I think, like Hannah was saying, the benefit of being part of the body. We need each other. We need to share these ideas and experiences so that we're not always reinventing the wheel or going through the same difficulties. I recently read a book about, it was entitled Surviving the Great Commission. It was a book on expectations and burnout, and that's really what helped me realize, expectations are huge because of how powerful they are. But to have to look back and write a book about surviving, basically serving Jesus, because of the challenges, the self-expectations, the push to see things done, a lot of healing has happened in the author's life, but that was very poignant to me. We don't want people to say, well, I survived that. One of our taglines for global teams is that we really want to enable them to thrive while on the field and not merely survive. Because that's what a lot of missionary stuff is just survival.
At first, we were appointed someone,
Mm-hmm.
and now we formed our own team of people in our congregation and outside family and different things like
Okay.
that. So I'm wondering if you would address appointing.
I don't think that there's one better than the other. I think it can be both. Global Teams had a vision for partner caregivers who would be assigned to each field partner. And sometimes it was a great fit between those who had volunteered and stepped forward, and sometimes not such a great fit. So we don't have, it's got to be one way or the other any longer, right? So if there's a caregiver who's going to regularly check in with you, how are you really doing? Ask those hard questions. Come alongside. Let them hate it if they hate being there. Because as missionaries, we feel very challenged to be really honest with partners, like supporting partners, because what if they hear we don't like it and we're unhappy and they make us come home, or they stop supporting us. So it's a real challenge to have that freedom to be totally open and honest.